significantly small. You can see that it's small, rounded, three materials combined together, maybe less than a millimeter each. So take a look at it and think of what you see. You can open them by yourself at home, separately from mine explanation, so that you can take a look at different places on the slide and consider explaining it before I do. Now, let's enlarge it. Each of these is significantly small. They're appearing to be roundish, as far as you can see, looking as if a very, very small biopsy taken a small part of an organ. And if we go and enlarge the slide, we can observe that there are some small foveolar portion of glands, gastric glands with chief and parietal cells. Now let's try to mark the different cells. The chief ones are majorly more transparent, while the parietal cells are more thick with eosinophilic cytoplasm. You can observe them well. Unfortunately, not many of these seen here, so my suggestion is that this is a pinch biopsy from an antromucosal layer of the stomach. And what I also observe here, that there is inflammatory infiltrate in the subalveolar space here, which have suffered hyperplastic changes. Take a look at the foveolar layers of glands, which are on actually multiple layers of cells. What we observe also here are some significant glands in the, actually gastric glands, in the chorion of the stomach. Here, the inflammatory infiltrate is well marked. There is stasis of blood, hyperemia on certain places. We can even mark some artificial hemorrhages here and there due to the pinch biopsy. That's not something specific. And what we see here is the formation of a follicle, which is looking more like of a lymph follicle, actually aggregate of lymphocytes, because to be called a lymph follicle, it should be having a germ center. And under it, we observe significant fibrosis, which is combined with, well, not here, but maybe at the other particles of the stomach. We might be able to observe some smooth muscle cells. Let's take a look at this one here. Now, maybe this one is a part of a smooth muscle cells, the darker layer on the inside. Now, when during a binge biopsy, we are able to observe so much of material like the fibrosis, smooth muscle layers, the thinner wall, the marked fibrosis in between the glands, they're looking thicker. And here we see some small fibrous strands, which are actually a component in between the glands. So when we're able to observe such changes, we may think of a process known as atrophy. And due to these chronic inflammatory changes in between the glands, forming portions of lymphoid follicles, also the fibrous tissue strands which have grown in between the glands, also the foveolar hyperplasia, which is superficial here. This is artificial desquamation of the artificial layer, which is not actually it's not an ulceration here, which we can consider further in the other slide. I will show you what an ulceration means. So what will your diagnosis be here? We have inflammation, which is chronic. What will your diagnosis be here? Chronic, first, and second, atrophy. Yes. Would it be exacerbated as a process? What will speak about the acute inflammatory process here? Would it be called also exacerbated? And how would you prove that I'm wrong if I tell you that diagnosis, according to me, is exacerbated? What should I see here in the inflammatory infiltrate? It's well marked with lymphocytes now. Again, lymphocytes here. So what should I see? Neutrophils for acute reaction. Very well. Yes, this would be called exacerbated, or it would be called chronic active gastritis if I see neutrophils in between the inflammatory cells here, or if I see intraepithelial neutrophils which are positioned in between the glands, the glandular cells. Imagine that this is a gland, actually it is a gland in the chorion of the stomach. So in between the epithelial cells, if I see some neutrophils, I would be able to call this type of gastritis chronic, exacerbated, or chronic with marked activity. I don't see them here. That is why I will mark this type of gastritis as chronic, and I will mark it also as atrophic because I can see those glands which are surrounded by fibrous tissue strands, small portions, but yet they exist. These huge layer of fibrosis with mixture of smooth muscle cells, which are actually due to the pinch biopsy taken because the mucosis of the stomach is much thinner than usually. And that is why I will mark it as atrophy. And also the foveolar hyperplasia here, which can bring me to the idea that there is duodenogastro reflux of fluid. It's causing the foveolar layer to be this hyperplastic. So pretty much that is all about this slide. What is chronic gastritis due to? Most often reason. Great. How would you treat it? That's not a question for pathology, but yet you should be prepared for gastroenterology, I believe next year. With antibiotics and proton inhibitor. So yes, that is actually the treatment. It's called eradication of Helicobacter pylori. And if you don't treat it and the gastritis becomes more severe, what can you observe inside in the gastric mucosis? There will be some change of the epithelium. And it could suffer what? Metaplasia. Not ulceration, but yeah, ulceration sometimes could happen due to damage because of the increased acidity of the mucosis. Also, there could be some metaplastic changes. Chronic gastritis, chronic inflammation, very often leading to metaplasia, which is considered a pre-precancerous condition. So it should be well observed and should be taken care of, eventually observed and with very big attention, because it could bring cancer to develop. Do you have any questions about this slide?